welcome, guys. Am I playing Aaron? Are you playing Aaron?
Yeah, who's playing
Okay,
Aaron?
we'll both play Aaron. We're just talking to each other. Welcome, guys. We're doing another video. Brandon Wicknick.
Taylor Ray.
And we're going to talk today. This is weird because Aaron's over there
Aaron's
off camera.
over there. He's watching us. He's
he's
like the dad that's like, you better do this interview right.
We have to let you know where he is because I know he's going to interject and say something at some point.
You can hear him in the background.
But we're going to chit-chat. So I've known Taylor for quite a while.
Long time.
And we've driven together a little bit recently. And one thing I want to talk about up front is kind of like, I feel like I watch his videos, and I feel like him and I are similar in a lot of ways, but we're also different in a lot of ways. And so I want to talk about that for a second because we were kind of chit-chatting about that before. We both like doing work ourselves. We both build cars. We're both very passionate about drifting. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep, no.
He is very calculated and precise on when he does a build and thinks through it and plans and projects like how things are going to work. Whereas I tend to be like, I'm going to do that. And then I go kind of start on it, get in over my head, and then kind of like swim to the top and then drown a little bit and then like make that kind of happen. And that's kind of where like the result of our builds kind of splits because his are like very it takes longer.
It takes longer,
but
that's the key.
It ends up like a really, really nice build. Where mine, like, I figure it out, I fix it, I break it, I figure it out, I fix it, I break it, kind of that kind of thing. And it never is like, perfect. It's always like just needing a little bit more. So we have similarities, but I think that's kind of where our differences split a little bit.
Because we both are like the ones working on the car, the ones changing tires, the ones driving the rig, the ones doing all the stuff, And like, I'm not mad about doing that either.
Right.
Like, I don't know that I
process.
could let someone just do all that for me. I don't know that you could either.
It takes some of the pleasure out of it. I enjoy doing that side. I tell Aaron this, he's like, why don't you just buy a car that works all the time? And I'm like, I like building cars. That's part of the fun for me.
Right. And like, if you just had an arrive and drive, I feel like if you didn't have to work as hard for it, it would make it less rewarding when you did it.
Good point. I know a lot of viewers can relate to that because they do the same way we do. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's part of the struggle, and usually it comes from not being able to afford it. Right? You start like a lot of guys like, oh, if I could just pay to do it, but then you kind of like, well, I kind of enjoy doing this.
That's literally exactly what happened to me when I first was working on cars. It was like pure necessity. Like I had this Porsche 944 Turbo, and I started learning how to drift, and I broke it. And I spent 2 weeks fixing this car. It was a torque tube. You had to pull the transaxle and stuff. It was terrible. I'd never done an oil change, and I'm pulling a transaxle out of a 944 Turbo. It was awful. And I had to ride my bicycle to work for 2 weeks. Like, it was terrible. And I was like, man, I just wish I could pay someone, but I can't afford it. So I had to learn. And for a long time, I didn't like building cars. I didn't like working on cars. Like, it was a means to an end. Like, I just wanted to drive. I didn't want to work on cars. But somewhere along the way, that switched for me. And it's weird because I heard people say that before, like, oh, I like building cars as much as I like driving them. And I'm like, you're full of it. You just must suck at driving, and that's your excuse. And I'm like, I didn't believe it. But now I'm kind of that way too, where like, I don't know, I just enjoy the process. Like I enjoy, if I didn't know how to like do fabrication and stuff, like I wouldn't enjoy it as much. Because that's probably my favorite thing is like, looking at a problem, like how can I fit this turbo in here and like keep it away from all this hot stuff and have room for the downpipe to go somewhere and have room for an intake. And like when you get it all done, you're like, it's so rewarding,
Yep.
But for me, with the taking my time thing, I guess for you, it's like you're kind of always in a rush to get it done, to go do something, And like you hustle and just slam it together, whereas like I just can't do it. Like I can't slam a car together even if I try to, like I'm just terrible at that. Terrible at deadlines. Like I don't know how I made this deadline happen, but it was a bolt-on car, so it's kind of hard to mess that up. But for me, like building my vet, it was more so like I just learned so much from the Miata and like different things. Like, man, this issue seems to happen a lot, and it really sucks to change the spark plugs in this car. So let me make sure, like, the next time
it's gonna be easy.
It's easy to change spark plugs, And you can't think of everything, and like, there's always compromises.
Do you make lists and stuff when you're at the event, or like, how do you?
No, it's just really from like years of running the Miata, like just thinking about like different things that would have issues. And then like you can get way over, like I overthought it a lot, and like you get to this point where you realize like one wire can cause you to lose a whole competition. And like if you realize you can't foolproof everything, because you're like wiring something and you're like, oh, well, I should heat sleeve this wire because if this wire melts, then I lose my map sensor. If I lose my map sensor, the engine won't run. And you're like, damn, that one strand of wire could be the difference. Like the car could just shut off mid-run and it's done, I'm over.
Yep.
So then it gets to the point where you're like, it's almost overwhelming. You're like, well, I can't prepare for everything, so like, why even bother? You know? But just trying to think of like different things. Like I did like a lot of people do wastegate lines like the nice way is like the push lock stuff, and I did AN with heat sleeve because I'm like, if one of these melts, car over boost, I blow the motor up. Like I'd rather spend the money on the AN fittings and not risk blowing the motor up.
Right. That's a good level to attain. You know what I mean? To aim for.
Right.
Is to be like, try and foolproof as much as you can. Obviously, it's not possible to do it.
No, it's never perfect.
You never know. You do all that, and then something else is going to happen.
Yeah,
but
some
like,
little thing.
But if you eliminate as many variables as possible,
right. And you add that to the memory bank,
right.
You're like, oh wow, this one thing took me out of comp.
Yep.
You know, like I had the first round of Klutch Kickers like 2 years ago, season 2. I had this issue, and it swore it was ignition, and I like coil packs, plug wires, spark plugs, cam sensor, crank sensor, and it was my injectors were clogged. And then like the next time you know that, and you know you add those things like over time, like every issue you have, you get to just kind of like add it to the troubleshooting checklist.
Right.
And then just trying to do that, like trying to implement all of those potential
And
things.
that goes into your diagnostic bank too.
Yes.
Like I've seen this before.
Yep.
You know, or you share information. I was asking you the same thing, and you're
Yep.
like, hey, check your injectors, and it ended up being my injectors. You know.
Yep.
Because every time, if you have a failure or a problem and you don't learn from it, you're wasting your time.
Oh, yeah.
Every time you have a failure, you need to learn the hard lesson and remember next time, either eliminate it or come to that conclusion a lot sooner.
It's like that teach a man to fish thing, you know, like if every time someone has a problem, like someone comes in and is just like fixes it, then they're never gonna learn. And I had it like that, you know, I had friends who always like knew more than me, and they would just like fix it or help me time the motor or whatever. And then like when they weren't around, I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I've put this motor together 3 times, but I don't even know how to time it because I've never been the one to do it, you know? And it's like, if you don't learn the hard way and like figure it out yourself, you don't know. But then you also pool your resources. Like you've probably had an issue I haven't had, and one day, you know, and like we all just kind of work together, and it's like, yeah, this issue is doing this, and I thought it was this, and I checked this, and then I'm like, oh, what about this, you know? And it's kind of cool how that works too. You all kind of pull together when you have this weird issue that you can't figure out. And like someone knows the answer. Like someone's had that problem and figured out the solution. And that's really all it is just problems and solutions.
Right.
You know what I mean? And building up that diagnostic bank in your head of like, this was the problem, this was the solution.
Yeah.
So that's always kind of neat.
Drift Week 7 is brought to you by all these amazing sponsors such as Just Racing. We made some episodes with them recently. They make amazing engines. We look around their machine shop. BC Racing Custom Coilovers. They've been supporting Drift Week and Lone Star Drift for a very long time. Thank you so much. WhatMonstersDo.com has a new logo. Go to their website. Check out their stuff. Ebisu is the discount code. Vapetasia. Thank you so much for supporting Drift Week Vapetasia, and thank you for driving on the trip, Chris Finch. NK Wheels. I've been running RPF ones for 2 decades almost. I absolutely love them. They're my favorite wheel. I'm sure you know that by now. Thank you, NK Wheels. Volino Tires makes a 285/35/18 08C 300 treadwear tire. It is my absolute favorite tire. I run on my S14. Thank you, Volino Tires. And Heatwave Visual. Thank you so much, Heatwave, for supporting this content and letting us do what we do and putting sweet shades on my head.
I've followed a lot of what you do, and like some people even joke because like you did the Fummins, right? Mm-hmm. And then I did the Fummins, but it's been an idea I've had in my head for a while.
Oh yeah.
And so I was kind of like, everyone's like, oh, you did what Taylor Ray did. I was like, well, I had the idea, but then I started watching your videos and like, I'm gonna do it that way, and this way, and this way, and this way, and it's like, and then I've had that idea also. I've been trying to build a shop at my house. Like that's kind of my goal.
Yeah,
and you did it. I'm like, I'm gonna start watching his videos and kind of like, you know. So that in that way, I feel like we're really similar. Like kind of the pathway to certain goals and stuff like that, right? Just different ways of getting there.
Yeah, people. I hate when people are like, and I feel like it's gotten better in the internet, but like at least years ago it was so bad. Like if you did anything remotely like somebody else did, people were like, oh, you're copying them, and it's like, dude, nobody's copying anybody. There's only so many finite number of things that any individual can do. You know, like
you can't build a V8. A V8 S13. How dare you do that? So-and-so started. My buddy was the first one to ever do that.
Yeah, he's the first one to make a YouTube channel, YouTube videos doing it.
If it's a good car, it's a good car, you know?
Yeah, just like the Fummins swap. I mean, it's just like a good swap. You take the 644, you put the Cummins in, it's great.
I remember you even told me, you said, do a 24 valve. I'm like, nah, I'm going to do a 12 valve, you know? It's just like...
I was trying to get you to do a common rail, but
I know.
Can you run the common rail on the oil
I don't
like
think
you do?
so.
Probably
I don't think so.
If I knew that you were going to run it on oil, this guy runs his thing on oil. He just puts straight oil in there. You're a maniac at doing it cheap, that's for sure. Like, and I feel like I suck at doing things on the cheap because I'm like, I can be wasteful with like, oh, I'll buy another tire pressure gauge because I forgot mine.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I mean, to be fair, Aaron brings this up a lot. It comes back to bite me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can stretch a budget, but it's not easy. It's not easy. Sometimes it comes back to bite you.
Do you ever wonder if do you ever think, okay, let me try doing it the other way and see what happens?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I've done things both ways. So my pro car, I spent a ton of money on the motor, and then it failed immediately.
Oh.
For who knows, I don't know exactly what the reason is.
Yeah.
Then I put an AccuSump on it, and I'm on my second motor, and it's working, and I'm like, and I throw together these junkyard 1J, 2Js, and they last forever. And I spend all this money on a 2J, and it blows up like my third lap.
Yeah, I guess
and I'm
that
like,
doesn't make it easy for you to stick with that route.
Right, it's like, come on, you
it's
know?
so hit or miss. Yeah, that's true.
But I feel like with a scientific process, there's always a margin of error. So I'm like, was that just like, you know?
Yeah. Was it like a clogged injector and each driver failed?
Right.
That's the thing with cars and turbo cars, and that's why I do like LSs a lot. And it's not, I don't like them per se. They're boring. They're boring to drive. They don't almost ever sound cool, you know, but the nice thing about an NA LS is you cannot hurt it. Mm-hmm. You just can't hurt it. My Miata had 2 clogged injectors, and I ran it until the point where those cylinders finally stopped firing. And the Holly was just adding fuel and adding fuel and adding fuel, and it didn't hurt it at all. Didn't care.
That's awesome.
But with the turbo car, even with a 500 horsepower JZ, it's if you lean out a cylinder under boost, you're gonna melt a piston.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So that's the tough thing with the Vette is now I have to be way more on top of that stuff. The Miata, I could slack and I didn't change the injectors or do anything with the fuel system, and it had E in it for years. And I would always talk about that. Oh, everyone says E85 clog stuff. I've never had any issues. And I clogged my injectors. Yeah. And I was like, dang it. But I can't do that with the Vette. So what are your thoughts on driving a pro level car versus a race car that's not pro level? Let's say stock bottom end JZ, CD, trans, stock diff versus a dog box quick change built JZ. Do you really think it makes that much difference when it comes to operating that car at the track? Because people make it out like that, and you'll hear people talk about that, but from the Miata to the Vette, it hasn't really been much different.
Really?
Yeah, it really hasn't. I'm not servicing the transmission at the track. It's really not any different. I feel once you get to that race car threshold, it's kind of all the same. You know what I mean? But I don't know. What are your experiences with that?
It's funny you bring that up because I went from my original S13, which is the one I have on this trip. I haven't driven it since 2015. So kind of my progression, I got to the point where that became my pro car, and it was the highest level of car I'd ever owned. And then in 2015, I stopped driving it. And then I've probably built 5 or 6 cars since 2015, different JZs with CD09s and this and that. And those have all been really fun cars to drive, really. And that's the one I took to Klutch Kickers, and I dialed. I could drive that car just like your Miata.
Yep.
You get so comfortable, even though it's not the highest horsepower, best setup ever. You just get so comfortable, and you can drive it like it's your right hand. You know?
Exactly that.
And then now I'm back in this car that's a ton of horsepower, dog box, and it's really fun to drive, but I don't feel as comfortable it's my right hand as if it were one of those other cars. So I'm literally in my mind on this trip, I'm like, man, why am I doing this? But to compete at a high level, you almost have to have the equipment of it's more reliable. A dog box is more reliable, it's easier to service, right? You're not going to have the failure like you do on a...
Right, and even just shifting, you think, the run-up in a competition is so critical.
You can't afford
if you
even
miss
half
shift,
second.
You could lose, and that's I think something people who haven't done competitions don't see is you don't realize how little tiny moments can ruin a whole weekend. You have all this build-up of prep the car, mount tires, load the trailer, do the trip, get there, practice, qualifying, and then one battle could be lost because of a missed shift.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And that's where you need the equipment. It's the cars don't really get much faster.
Right.
I feel from your other car to your pro car, it's probably not that much faster.
No, I don't think so.
If you were tandeming with yourself, you'd probably be about the same.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I don't know. I'm torn on if you need it or not. I'm torn on comp versus fun drifting. How do you feel when you're at comps? Do you stress about what I dislike about competitions compared to like Drift Week's great because like it's open grid. Like if I'm driving a new car, so I'm not like confident that it's okay. So I could go do 2 laps. I come in, I check it out.
Right.
You know, like it's whatever.
And there's no stress that you're losing practice time. Or
Right.
like
It's
that
not
you're
like,
learning the
we've
track.
got this 2-hour session. Like I've got to be out there every single lap. You know.
Right.
And then just not having to be somewhere. You know, like that's what always kills me at comps is like, I feel like I've got to be somewhere at a given time.
Right,
You know,
right.
and like. They're like, oh, if you miss your qualifying run, it's a 0. So you're trying to watch qualifying, but you're like, all right, there's like 10 people left. Like I should go get my car ready. How long is that going to take me? I hate that part.
Have you ever had a failure right before qualifying?
I had my brake lights weren't like quit working right before a battle, and I'm literally like under my dash, like butt connecting the wire, and then like went straight to battle.
Stress levels like up here,
Oh,
and then you
it's
got to get back in your car
and
and
you're
go.
not going to drive well like that, you know?
yeah.
Maybe you drive better because you're
I don't
like
know.
dumping adrenaline trying to get it done. But do you feel that though? Like the wait, like for me, it's like the waiting around but needing to be ready that I hate about
And then
competitions.
sitting in line waiting, and it's just like watching everyone else practice, and it's stressful.
Sitting in a hot car, just
Yep.
idling and idling and idling. Yeah, no, this is so nice because I mean, other than private days, like I don't get to drive like this much because back home we have run groups, you know. So it's like it's almost the same thing where like you're like, oh, I got to get ready for my run group. You go out there and it's like, oh, I forgot to air my tires down. Something stupid, you know. But you're like, it's a 20-minute session. By the time I go to my pits, grab my tire thing, air my tires down, and get back out, it's going to be over. So it like forces you to drive with issues just because you're like, I got this session to deal with, and that's it.
Right. What pushes you to want to do comp as opposed to just doing it for fun?
I really don't even know.
There's got to be something there.
I mean, I like trying, like being able to see where I stack up. You know, like I always wondered, and then when I was younger, like I was definitely disillusioned back in the day. Like back when I was like, you know, back like 2013, 2012, 13, you know, like I progressed relatively quickly, you know, and people around me were like pumping my head up. They're like, oh, you've learned so quick for like the car you have. And I let it get, I'm like, oh, I need to go compete. Like I need to do this. And then I went to 1 round of FD with Chelsea. And I was like, this dude's a way better driver than I am. And he is struggling to like keep all this together and make this happen. And I was like, nah, I'm not doing it. I want to say it was your first season.
13.
Yeah, it was when I went to that FD round because I remember I loved your car. Because I was like, damn, sick coupe with big lip wheels. Like, it was
Too
sick.
low to be competitive.
Yeah, it was sick though. It was sick. I remember. I'll never forget that. But anyway, and then I was like, nah, I don't want to do comps.
Right.
Like, I don't.
So that
ever
turned
wanna
you off
do
to
this.
it.
Yeah, completely. I was like, nah, I'm good. And then I went to a Lone Star event for fun, and I was like, well, while I'm here, I'll compete in the Pro-Am. And I like did well. I won. It was at Police Academy, and then I went to TMS. And
Was that your first comp?
Yeah.
And you won it?
Yeah. I did street legal once, but anyway.
That's a good way to get a hook in your mouth for comp.
Dude, it gets
you
worse.
win your first comp.
It gets worse. So that was like when I first got to Miata and won that one, and everyone was like, oh, well, it's the small track, small car thing, like your car's a rocket, all this stuff. Like, so I was like, fine, all right. So I went to the next one, which is at TMS, and I get to fast track, you'll never win, and I won there. And then I was like, man, it's still a fluke. And every single time going into this, I'm like, I just want to make it a battle or two. Like, I had no expectations. Then I went to Klutch Kickers, and I was like, I was so torn on going. I'm like, I don't stand a chance. And then I made it to the finals. And the problem with all that, though, was like every time leading up to that, I was like, I'm not going to do well, and it went well, and I'm like, someday soon, I'm going to go out early, and I don't even know what that feels like, and it's going to suck. And it did, dude. The first time I went out early, it was like top 16, and I was like bitter, man.
Really?
I was so bummed. Because like I hadn't had that happen before. And then obviously
Winning is just normal. That was your normal.
And from there, it's been ups and downs. You know, go out 64, 32, whatever. Now it's normal.
Right.
But it was like a weird
Tough
way
pill to
to
swallow
start
the
it
first
out.
time.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Because it's like when I was going into all these things with low expectations so that when I did get knocked out early, it wouldn't hurt. And I would be like, oh, this is what I was expecting. And then I like got to the point where I'm like, I keep telling myself this and I keep doing well. Like, you know, I stopped believing that I wasn't going to do well, and then I didn't do well.
Yeah.
And it was just, anyway. But I don't know what it is. It's almost like that feeling where you feel like you should do it. Like you feel like it's a waste not to do it.
Right.
But then also you're like, is that just me, like my own delusion that I think that I need to do this when I really don't need to do this.
Right.
What about you? Why do you like
That's
doing
funny. Like in 2009, I have a similar story. Like there was a traveling circus called GT Live that came to Utah Motorsports campus in Utah.
Okay.
And it was a bunch of California guys, right? They were coming up to our place and they were holding a Prime. I had no idea what that was. I was still kind of new at drifting. I had my pro car was a CA car at the time, just like pretty stock, you know.
Right.
They did this competition. I was like, I don't know, I guess I want to keep driving, so I'll enter the comp. I got 9th place, whatever. And then they're like, oh, that's an invite to this whatever licensing series thing. I don't know what that means. They're telling me, oh, if you go to this licensing series in Long Beach, then you get a Formula D license. I'm like, I don't know what any of this means.
What
I had no
is all
idea.
this?
And so, but you needed a cage and all this stuff. I couldn't afford it at that time, but I was like, I kind of got hooked. I'm like, well, what does all this mean? It's the first time I thought about competition, and then I got a little more serious and started doing Prime and all that stuff. And so like, for me, it's kind of that hook, like, whoa, maybe I'm kind of good at this. If a bunch of Cali guys came here and I got 9th mixed up with the rest of them, like maybe
didn't even know what it was.
Maybe I'm actually good at this, right? And then I started going to Vegas Prime, and I realized I was decent. And then I got licensed the same year as Odie, and I think Danny George, there were some guys like that kind of in that group, and I was like, man, these guys, you know, these guys are good drivers, and I'm like hanging with them. Forrest was in there at the same time. He was kind of dabbling in Prime and stuff.
That's so crazy
and it's
to
like,
think that was that long ago.
And we were all like,
No, not in a bad way, but like, I remember, I remember your
like
first FD
2010
season,
to 2015.
and it didn't seem like that long ago in my head, you know what I mean? Like,
but yeah, like
that's a long time.
So in that time, Prime was like a big thing, I feel like, especially in Vegas on the West Coast, and that's what's lacking today. But the reason I say that is like, I think it was 3 or 4 years I did Prime, and I was consistently on the podium in Prime, and I was like, okay, if I can do this 2 or 3 years consistently in the top 4, I think I'm ready to make the move, right? As opposed to like, hey, I started drifting last year, I'm going to go to one licensing event and then go to pro spec. It's like, you might be a good driver, but it's more than, you need to be ready. Like, you need to be seasoned and like, but some of them do well, you know what I mean? It's just like that. I feel like there's kind of a process to go through to kind of learn and be ready to be at that. So anyways, I did it that way, and then I got it over my head in FD, and I realized like stepping back, it's like, all right, I wasn't ready. After 4 years of Prime, I wasn't ready to really understand what it meant to go
and back
to that
then,
level.
I mean, that was when you just went straight
to pro. Straight to pro. And then I was in the year where they did pro spec and pro, the same, like they started, or pro 2. So I did both of them. So I did double duty for 3 years in a row of like, it's kind of like if you're paying to be there, it's just extra tires at that point, and abuse on the car, which I figured out, and failures and stuff. But it's that hook, right? That hook caught me, and I was like, this is really fun. And so like after I stopped doing that, we can transition to the fun stuff now, right? Because like I got to FD and I got beat up, and it was like, man, it stopped being fun for me because it was like, you know, I couldn't break through that bottom side of the bracket, you know, it's like, it's really hard. And then when you start at the bottom of qualifying, you know, and the scores keep going up, it's tough. So then when I got done with that, it's like, okay, I just want to go have fun now. And unfortunately, a lot of guys that go to FD and stop, just quit. They start going fishing or whatever they do, you know, go ride motorcycles or whatever. And like drifting, I'm passionate about it. For me, it's not like, it wasn't like, oh, I want to be the best or nothing at all.
Exactly.
It's like, hey, I can deal with having been mediocre and then go back to like having fun again. So now I'm a lot better driver now because I've been drifting for 10 years almost since I stopped doing FD. And it's like the level of stuff, just having fun. And one thing to bring up in this is like, in a competition setting, you might recognize this feeling, but like if you can turn off the stress and just feel like I'm driving with my homies, you do so much better. But if you have the stress, you can pull up to the line like, I got to win this battle. I want to move through. You know what I mean? That stress level kind of like almost messes with you. When people talk about head games, that's what I realized what a head game is. You should be able to differentiate. You should not be able to differentiate between having fun and competition. If you can be on the same level, like, yo, this is the same as if I'm pulling up next to Aaron and having fun on Drift Week. That's how you win. That's how you win.
I remember reading a Speed Hunters article, and it was like Vaughn talking about how like, you know, getting over that, like dealing with the head games and whatever. And I remember like having never done it, thinking like, why wouldn't you just not stress about it? Like, obviously, if you stress about it, that's bad. Just don't stress about it. Like, it was so easy, you know? And then now I understand. For me, like, first battle's always the hardest. Like, if I can get through the first battle, I'm
momentum as you start winning battles.
Like, once you get to, like, top 8, top 4, I'm like, I'm chilling. And I'm also like, hey, I'm just happy I made it here. Like, if I lose, it's all right. But the other thing that, oh, man, well, it's not first battle. Oh, see, my thing is, like, I want to not lose more than I want to win. Does that make
Yep,
sense?
yep.
Like, it's not that I care so much about winning. I just don't want to lose, you know? Like,
Because you don't want to stop driving, or what?
yeah, and I just don't want to lose.
Right,
I don't want to get beat.
Yeah.
But I don't really care to beat them. I don't want to be like, I'm better than you. I just don't want them to be able to say they're better.
It's the same thing, but it's like.
Yeah, I know it sounds stupid,
That's funny.
but it's
No,
true.
I get it.
It's true.
Yep.
It's always, I have a hard time when I battle someone I like, because in the moment I'll just be like, yeah, I don't care, and then afterwards if I lose, I'm like, I should have drove harder.
Well, you and I had the 3 one more time battles.
Dude, that was fun.
That was one of the highlights of my season for that year, because they were such tight battles, and like we'd pull up to the line, I'm like, I don't know, like I don't know. He was on me.
Like, I don't know how I drive any harder than I just drove. Like especially when we went for the third one, I was like, I literally don't think I can do any more than I've already done. Like, I had about the best chase.
All 3 battles for me were 100%. Like, I couldn't go any harder. It was just like, it was, and you know, we just talked about this, but it's all about timing. You know what I mean? Like the timing transitions. Like after the videos, like you're touching my bumper and stuff. It's like,
no, that was
high level driving.
Pictures of like how my front lip flares and yours flares out, and they were like literally. I'm like, is that an optical illusion? Like, no,
But by the time we were on a 3rd battle, I didn't care anymore about winning or losing. I'm like, this is top level driving.
Yeah,
it was so good.
Just fun. And that's like, for me, like I have no problem losing a battle if it's like
hard fought.
If it's a hard fought battle, like we just both went hard, they outdrove me.
Right,
great. I don't like losing on technicalities.
Exactly.
And obviously it sucks to lose to making you make a stupid mistake.
Right. Or mechanical failure, things like that. It's always good to go out with like, we both drove hard, someone drove a little bit better.
Right.
That's the best.
Yeah, mechanical failures. So for me, the fun drifting side, I guess this is part of what drove me to doing comps. And dude, I had like a switch flipped in me at the LZ Invitational. Like while we were at the compound, everyone was drifting around in their fun cars, and like it clicked to me, like part of the reason I really like comps is seeing people like you, people that I know from all over the country together and getting to drive with all these different people. I'm like, wait a second, like I can just do this without it having to be a comp. But I think the thing for comp with me is like, so me and Ben, we both had LS Miatas, and we both like drove together a lot. And like, yeah, we're driving with the same person, but I mean, we got to the point where like you literally set the tire on the door for like the whole lap, you know? And like, there really wasn't any way to progress further than that besides like maybe going to gnarlier tracks. So then it's like, really the only way to progress from there once you get to that point is to compete. You know, you got to do it right here, right now, whatever. So it's like, it's almost like whether you crave progression or not. You know, and I feel like as humans, we crave progression.
Right.
We always want to be progressing and have the opportunity to progress. Like if you're just kind of doing the same thing over and over again, it starts to get boring, and maybe that's why we're attracted to comps. We're like moths to a freaking light with comps.
Well, you brought up something about driving with a close friend. Like I did that for a while, where we had a team. We were doing like team stuff, and that's a whole different style of drifting. I was with my buddy Nick and Eric and Scott and Jerry, and so like we were basically trying really hard to like, it's like flying in formation.
Right.
You're not trying to beat the guy, but you're trying to drive in such a way where you all can be as close as possible. And it like changes your mindset when you want to open the door and make sure, okay, now let me transition like this so he can get up on me again.
Let me slow down.
You're not trying to run away from him.
So that way it's not abrupt. See, that really hurt me when it came to competing at first, because like I was so used to mainly playing the sim. I used to play the sim a lot. Now I never play it. But like trying to be really smooth with my inputs. So like if I'm going to slow down into a corner, instead of like sending it in all aggressive and e-braking, like I would just start pedaling it early, like before the transition, and just gradually slow down because it's way easier to follow. But I would do that in battles, and it would make my lead run look boring. And then it would also be way easier to follow. The worst is when I battle someone and they'd have a terrible lead line and like terrible to follow, and then they come up to me after and be like, yo, your lead was so good. And I'm like,
you made it easy for him.
Yeah.
That's funny.
All right, we could talk about another topic other than drifting. That's all we do, you know? Like, that's the problem. How have you not gotten sick of drifting after doing it for so long?
I really don't understand it.
Because I don't either.
I don't. Aaron always asks me, like, what's the next car to build? What's this and this? And I'm like, I'm kind of stuck in a rut because, like, I enjoy so much what I have and what I do. It's like...
that's all that matters, really.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a simple man, and like, just keep tracks open and keep tires on my car, and I'm happy.
Just keep driving.
Yep.
Yeah, because I've dabbled in other motorsports, and like...
Did you come from motocross or anything else that...
No, I rode BMX.
Okay.
So that's what I did before
Are you
drifting.
still into that?
No, I got back into it at one point after I'd started drifting because like I thought my car was broken. I thought it had rod knock because it's an RV car. It didn't have rod knock. It's one of those things like.
So you pick up a bike?
You know when you're younger, like your friends and you always assume worst case scenario. And there's certain people like that in groups, like automotive groups, that always assume the worst case. Like they hear a noise and like, oh dude, that's definitely rod knock.
Right.
Whereas like you do it long enough and you're like, dude, it's almost. Most of the time, it's not the worst case scenario. Like, it's rare that it's the worst case scenario. Anyway, I parked the car for like 6 months, started riding again. But the problem now is I'm like, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to like break my leg and then I can't work on my car, I can't drift.
Yep.
So, but yeah, like I've done some circle track stuff. Go-karts, pretty fun. And I like the wheel-to-wheel stuff, but there's something about drifting. And I think if you look at it and you think about like, every car commercial, like a car commercial can show a car setting the fastest time on the Nürburgring and it's not interesting. But you see, what do they always have? The cars are always drifting. If they're a sports car, they're always drifting because drifting is just like the most exciting thing to do with a car.
It really is.
I think rally would definitely probably be above that, but that's just like so next level,
Yeah.
But yeah, just like, I don't know. Road racing is a lot of fun. Wheel-to-wheel race. Have you done any wheel-to-wheel stuff?
Not really.
Go-karting or anything?
I mean, it's fun. It's fun trying to follow someone and
the wheel-to-wheel stuff's interesting because, like, you learn like what do they call it? Not racing etiquette, racecraft. And it's like when you're it's kind of like tandeming. It really is kind of like competition drifting. But you have more do-overs. Like that's kind of what sucks about comp drifting is like you have one chance.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
If you mess it up, then you're out.
It's over. Whereas in a race, it's like if you make a mistake on a corner,
try it on the
next
next
lap. Back up.
Yeah.
But it's fun to like watch people and see like where they're slower. And
you can
like,
learn how to get
set
around
up
them.
the pass, like fake them and stuff. Anyway, it's fun, but nothing. My point was nothing has been as fun as drifting.
It doesn't compare to drifting.
No. And then here, driving all these tracks, the only thing that sucks about this trip, coming out here driving all these tracks, is it really makes me extra disappointed in the tracks that we have back home or the lack of. Like, I didn't realize how not good we had it with tracks until, because, I know these tracks are here. Like, I've seen videos of them. But, like, driving from one to the other and realizing just, like, how close they all are together, and you're like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Dang. Really, got like a skid pad, and that's about it.
Do you have goals or aspirations for anything? I mean, what's your 2023 plan? Are you gonna, now that Klutch Kickers is out, that was
so
kind of what you were doing last year.
I want to do some comps. I like to do the Riverside stuff because I think they do a really good job. Did you go to that?
I did that one last year.
Did? Yeah, that was really good. And then maybe some of these other ones, try to hit up someone so I can. Honestly, it sucks. Like I literally just finished that car and I'm less in the mood for comp drifting now than I've been. I've always been torn on it, because it is that feeling of like coming to Drift Week, I shipped a car out here broken that needed to be retimed, had no idea if we were going to be able to fix it, and it was less stressful than like getting ready to go to a comp. Because I'm like, I'm just going for fun. If I don't fix it the first day,
if you're a day
we've
late,
got a whole nother day to drive. It's great. So, yeah, I don't know. I want to do it, and like, especially now that I have the car, because building that car was like, I've always been like the underdog, I've always had like less car and made it work kind of thing. And it works, and it was like enough car if you did everything perfect, but you couldn't make mistakes. I've always wanted to see how I could do, and I think a lot of other people have wanted to see how I could do with like equal machinery to like the best guys, But then it kind of sucks because now I'm the overdog. Now I battle someone in like a lesser car, and if I lose, it's like, you lost, you're in a pro car and you lost. So like, it kind of sucks. I got to get used to that. But yeah, so my 2023 plan, maybe do some of that stuff. If Aaron does another Drift Week, I want to do that. Drive the F80 more, and then I want to build like a tube chassis rally car.
So you got another build.
I want to sink my teeth into like a really long-term build, like a build that's like, normally everything I build, and I'm sure it's the same for you, it's like, it's for something, and it needs to be done for something, right? Like, I want to finish this car so I can go use it for this thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I want to do a build that's literally just about, more about the journey than the destination.
Right.
Like tube chassis, like full just crazy fab project build, and like push myself to learn new things. Maybe get like a the little CNC plasma
Right,
cutter
right.
and make pieces, and like that's what I want to do. That is what I enjoy just about the most out of anything, is like fabricating, like creating. Like I'm not a creative person, but like when you mix like creativity with like mechanical like logic, I guess maybe that's why I like it. I don't know, but that's the main thing I want to do next year. This year, it's 2023 already, right? Drift week, that, and then do some comps because I already built the car.
How's your drift week experience so far?
It's been really good.
Because you talked about going on the first one and the second one and the fourth one.
Pretty much
and
all
yeah,
of them. Yeah. There was like one or two where I actually thought it was maybe going to happen, but this is the first time where I really committed and made it happen. No, it's great. It's great. Like I don't know, I don't really have any complaints. I wish I wouldn't have built a car last minute, just in the sense, like it's been working fortunately, but just like I'm learning how to drive it. You know, it's still like new and fresh, so like I don't want to screw it up. You know, like I don't want to tear it up. I don't want to blow it up. You know, like if I had driven that car like a dozen track days already, you know, I'd be beating the crap out of it right now. Which I'm getting there. And I mean, I guess the benefit is I get plenty of time to like learn the car now. You know, over Drift Week. But it's like I'm so used to solely tandeming. I've been doing like mostly solo stuff, very few tandems, and that's kind of weird for me.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of nice because it's all new tracks. And like one thing I thought about the other day was, you know, when you're tandeming, when you're leading, I guess you get to experience the track. But like, especially when you're chasing, like you don't really get to experience the track because you're just looking at them. You know, like you're looking ahead a little bit, but like.
But you're focused on the lead
There's
driver.
so much going on. You're just focused on them. Whereas like when you just go do a solo lap, like you really get to like experience the track and like look around, like, oh wow, that rumble strip goes to there, and if I do this, I don't know, it's just interesting. I haven't done solo laps in a long time, and it's different.
Yeah.
But with the tracks being so cool, it's like it works, you know. But I guess the other thing I realized is like there is no like perfect car for this, because like you know, it's like where you give up somewhere, you gain. It's like gain performance, but sacrifice comfortability. Sacrifice performance, get comfortability, and then it's like, you know, the F80 is really good because it makes like a good amount of power. You know, they make like 500. So at Horse Thief, I didn't do it. I didn't stay in third most of the time because I didn't want to ruin the tires, but I could run third gear and like
the whole thing,
blink the big stuff, you know. So that was why I wanted to build one of those. Is that like instead of like a Z where you're just like always wanting more power, like it has enough. But it's not like super agile car, you know. And I've always driven, you know, I mean, I've driven a Miata forever, and then the Vette's like pretty nimble. Yeah. So it's weird to drive a car that's not super nimble, you know what I mean? But I need to do some more tandem going forward. Right. But that's the other thing that sucks about it is like it's like
you don't want to get your door caved in.
Yeah, I really don't. Yep. And I'm like, dang, like it sucks that I don't want to get my door caved in. Right. You know. Yeah. I don't like being that guy.
Yeah, that's how I took my Chaser on the last one, and I was like, I can't afford to buy a door. Have it imported from Japan.
How much is a door?
You know, I don't even know. And you can't just go to the door store and pay all the money. You got to find one and then have it imported and then pay all the money. And so I was in the same boat, and I was like, I don't. That's why this time I was hesitant to bring the Chaser because I didn't want to. I wanted to go and be able to tandem. Right. But like the Chaser's comfortable. It's nice. It's roomy. I can fit all my junk in the back and all that stuff. And I was like, hey. No tandems, guys. Just, you know, and that's no fun for Drift Week. And so, but like you said, you give up and you gain, right? Like the Chaser was a cool car for Drift Week, but you know,
it was comfortable, but it didn't perform super well as far as it's really tandem. Like pretty much any car can drift a track decent. Right. But it's just like when you get into tandems when you really start to notice the difference. Which we did some changes to it. It's funny. I've done more suspension changes to the F80 on Drift Week than I've done to my Vette, which is a comp car. Like most of the time, like I put whatever I think is gonna work on, and as long as it doesn't feel terrible, I'm
pretty
like,
close. Yeah.
All right, we're good. Yeah. That's it. I'm a firm believer in like setup does not matter anywhere near as much as people make it out to be. Right. Like I remember one time I checked my Miata's front toe for the first time in like the whole season, and it had 1.5 inches of toe in the front.
And you couldn't feel it?
I didn't know. I had no idea. No clue.
That's
and
wild.
Then I'll hear people be like, "Oh, my toe was out 1/16 of an inch, and that's why I wasn't leaking the track." And you're like,
all right.
It doesn't make that much of a difference. I don't think it does.
I agree with you.
You know?
That's funny. Which has been your favorite track so far?
I would say if I was driving a car, like, it's really tough. I want to say Horse Thief it's either Horse Thief or this one, or Apple Valley. I would say for tandem, Apple Valley for driving just for the track, like solo, Horse Thief. And I was going to say if I was in a car where I was tandeming a bunch, like the Vet, I would want to drive this track, Apple Valley.
Right.
But at the same time, it would have been really fun to have a wild car for that track and be able to link the super big stuff, like coming down that hill, that marching by the water tower.
Yeah.
Like, now I want to drive that track
Click
in
fourth
that
gear
car.
and just, yeah.
I haven't really got to drive a big track with it yet. No, I haven't. Because I've done, like, testing at the skid pad, the LZ thing, Klutch Kickers not on the bank. Yeah, I haven't really taken it to a big
Have you been on the
track
oval
yet.
at OSW?
I did, like, one lap with dead tires, but that was it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I haven't really opened it up yet.
Wow.
But it's
So that car still has a lot of testing to do, huh?
Yeah.
Or
I just
experience?
want to drive it on a fast
Yeah.
track where, like, you need the power and I
Right,
get to actually use it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it's been good. I think Horse Thief is definitely way cooler in person than it looks in videos. You know, you see videos of like people coming down the hill and you're like, oh, that's like a little hill. But when you're in the car and you're just like flick it down the hill and then the bank grabs you and you dig out of it. Like,
I mean, you're
so
pretty much
cool.
pinned from the top of the hill through the transition, and then you're like accelerating towards the bottom of the hill, and you're like, all right, now it's time to angle up and start braking.
And then it slows you down
That's
so
wild.
much too when you hit the bank. You just dig in.
Yeah.
No, it's sick.
That's cool.
Aaron looks tired. We should wrap this up. You got any more?
What else, Aaron?
My back hurts. These big giant
He hasn't been
chairs
paying
are
attention.
too
He's
big
just
for
he
me.
checked out.
Well, I'm listening.
Oh.
He's definitely listening. He looks tired.
I don't think we talked much about Brandon's building and stuff like that with his cars. And like,
Oh,
I mean,
no.
like the natural progression of what comes next. So like you brought out your, I'm not sure everybody can hear me, but you brought out your 2015 car.
Right.
Which is like going backwards in time, and that car is probably very similar to how it was.
Yeah.
Here, Aaron, you should get up and you should jump in. Tag in. Tag team.
No.
My butt hurts. This chair.
Sounds like an OnlyFans thing. If you want me to, I will.
Tag in. Tag in. Brandon, it
Give
was
me your
great.
mic.
Oh, yeah. I think it's great. You've been listening. Now it's your turn.
All right, the natural progression of things.
Taylor Ray, everybody.
Bye, Taylor. The natural progression of things with your car, like you did that chaser, you kind of like stepped right back out of it.
Right.
What was I gonna say?
About the car I'm driving now.
Sorry, we're very tired. We just got done with like multiple track days. Yeah, so your car, the natural progression of things. Taylor just left. Cy just cut a minute out. You're driving a car from 2015. You built a JZX. You're doing the exact same JZX like engine platforms, JZ engines, 1J, 2J,
Right.
with a turbo and all this stuff. I'm constantly changing up and like trying all kinds of wacky stuff. Turbo BMWs, turbo
Right,
JZs,
right.
V8s, like this carbureted V8 stuff. I want to do an electric drift car, but I'm kind of disinterested in that now. All this different stuff. Are you ever going to try anything different, or you just have so many JZs on the shelf? That's that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't have much interest in V8 cars. I know they're good. I know they got torque. In fact, I was telling you, I was having trouble keeping up with Aaron going up the hill
That's his driver.
at Horse Thief Mile. And it's like, I'm watching him pull away, and I know I got more horsepower, and he's like, well, your car's faster than mine, but it's just like the V8 can accelerate so much quicker, and I was not able to get the JZ to go up the hill like that. So I'm like, all right, what, you know. So I know that there's advantages, but no, I just love JZs. I don't know how else to put it. It's kind of like,
Yeah, but like, it doesn't have to be that. You could build some doomsday car that's 2,000 pounds. You
Yeah.
could build something that gets way better tire wear. Because some of my stuff, like that Blue Circle track car, it's not about building a V8 car, this or that. It was about building a really cheap, very aggressive, like, you know, race car that's built like a race car. That's easy on tires, easy on consumables, all these different
Right.
things. You haven't been around that car, have you?
no.
Yeah,
Uh-uh.
I was gonna say, it's so strange because it's not about the V8, but it revs super fast. Maybe you've heard it, the sound.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
sounds nuts.
You were kind of the first guy to kind of pioneer doing that, picking one of those up and doing a drift car.
Yeah, but I was gonna say it's exciting and like different, and like we don't know what we're doing necessarily. But that thing gets really good tire wear, and like
Because
everything's
it's so light.
Yeah, and everything's built like a race car on it, where everything is insanely serviceable. There's a starter inside, like starter switch inside the engine bay, so you know you can. Yeah, so you can like set valve clearance.
You don't have to use the power probe to start it under the.
No, you can. There's 2 starter things on it. There's all these different ways to do stuff on the car. It's just kind of fun to like try it. Like I really want to do an IMSA car. You know, like just all these crazy race car stuff.
Right.
While the JZ stuff is getting more expensive, like a 2JZ now costs as much as my entire circle track car.
It's true.
You don't think about anything different? You're like, nope.
I don't.
That's crazy.
I don't. Yeah, it is. I've talked about this with like Seth and some other guys that I know. Is like, why don't I build like a newer BMW, like a 335 or something? I think you and I talked about that too. And I was like, maybe I'll go to a 335. Right. And that's what Kelly just bought, a 335. And it's like, I drove it and I'm like, it's all right. But
isn't cool.
It's not a 2JZ. I thought it'd be like a 2JZ, but it's
not.
It's not. And the car itself is like, it's all right, but it just doesn't suit my style. So I don't know. One track mind.
That's fine. That's
Yep.
fair.
In 20 years, I'll be the only guy driving a classic car. It'll be worth $50,000 and I'll still be drifting it.
No, it won't be worth $50,000.
It'll be a classic.
That's fine.
A clapped out 240.
You're going to be like at Barrett Jackson, like, are these 2 Civic radiators from the internal combustion era? Very interesting, sir. You're going to be like, I made the corn juice myself. You can't buy it anymore. There's nothing wrong with doing the exact same thing over again, but you say you're a builder and you enjoy all that, but then you enjoy building the exact same thing over again. That makes sense?
I guess. I don't know.
Fair enough.
I mean, a couple of those cars, I've built them, I've driven them, and then I sell them, right? And so I kind of like, well, I liked that last one, so let me just build another one. If someone wants to buy it, I sell it.
I could say we've talked about this a few times, I drove your small turbo, like a 3071 size 2JZ.
Right.
S13. That car was interesting. That's not how most people would build it. And that car is faster than my V8 car, but your comp car makes 50% more than my V8 car, but your small turbo car is more power, like, you know.
That's the one I drove with. That's the one I drove against with Taylor, and it was like driving with my right hand. You know what I mean? It's like I knew that car. It would do exactly what you want. When you hit the throttle, it accelerates. And I compared it to like
if it accelerates when you hit the throttle.
Yeah.
The other one doesn't.
So
you could build like a G30, you know, like super responsive,
right?
Little 2J. Maybe it makes more power and is even more responsive than that turbo you have on.
But then if you want to put 265s or 285s with some real grip behind them, that's where it's going to suffer. Is not having the power to spin big tires if you need it, right? So that's.
I run 285s in mine, and mine makes 400 horsepower.
Yeah, but they're not like grippy.
They're 08Cs.
Okay.
Those are pretty grippy.
They're pretty grippy.
They're not as grippy as what you run?
I'm just saying, like, if you need some like real grip, there's like a power level where you have to be able to spin.
Or is that what your car's on right now? Grippy stuff?
Yeah.
And you still can't keep up?
I need gears. That's my excuse.
Gears.
We were just Taylor and I were just talking about excuses. That's my excuse. 50%, yeah.
That's wild.
What was I going to ask you? Oh, no, I was going to say, when you jumped in my car, it was at Medford. I just handed you the keys, go do a lap. And I know I rode with you, that's what it was. I rode with you.
That was a testament of you being a really good car builder. The car worked immediately and I just drove it.
You drove it like it was your own car. It was like, and I feel like there's kind of a recipe for S chassis that works really well.
Yeah.
And if someone hands you the key to a S chassis that's within that mold, it's just like driving any other car. And that's what I strive for, is a car that's easy to drive.
You did a good job on that one. Your comp car looks a little bit harder to drive.
It is.
All right.
It doesn't fit in that.
No, a lot of time people's comp cars. I remember Mesker rented Forrest Wang's car for around a Formula D.
Right.
And it had a 42R on top of a 2J, and like a 3-liter one, I think, or maybe it was 3.4. But like he struggled to drive that thing. It was so hard for him to drive. And then Forrest jumped in and like ripped. And
really?
Like, oh. I mean, it's his car. He
right. No, I rented a car for Klutch Kickers. It was a S14 fully built with a giant turbo, and I couldn't drive it. I posted a foot cam video just to prove that it was like, the turbo wouldn't go on a small track. It was like, so I get that. And then you give it to someone else who knows how to drive it, and it's like, I don't know how you do that. Car should be easy to drive. A car should be easy to drive. And I feel like your S14, your red S14 is probably like the perfect balance for like being able to make everything work. And so then when your car's not fighting you, then your driver skill can just go above and beyond and like.
All my cars are pretty easy to drive most of the time, or I get frustrated with them.
Right. And if they're not easy to drive, then you fix them so they are, right? You get rid of them.
Yeah, get rid of them. All right.
Well, I've really enjoyed driving with you on this trip. Let's do it again. You and I
We've
drive
done,
really
like,
well
6
together.
laps.
It was good. The good lap. Well,
They were good laps.
Yeah.
That's how you know you're getting old too. Like when you don't need 100 laps.
Yeah.
You're like, those were a good 6 laps.
That was a good 6 laps. Time to pack it up.
Yeah. We would have done more today, but he showed up 6 hours late, 8 hours late with the cars.
Yeah.
He's like, I had errands.
And-
What does that mean? Is it track
I had
day?
to buy a belt. It took 6 hours to go find a belt.
All right.
Excuses.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
hope you enjoyed your Taylor Ray interview.
Yep.
Or
Oh,
chat.
I almost missed this drift week. I wasn't going to come on this drift week, and then Aaron convinced me to come, and I'm glad you did
Good.
because I've been on every one. This is the 7th one, and it's a blast. It's crazy seeing the progression from when we started on the first one to where we're at now.
I think you drive better, by the way.
Since then, well, we talked about this with both the some of the pro guys that come on the trip too. Like you can't get this much intense training anywhere else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Back-to-back tandem laps with no stress. It's really good. It's a cool thing you've created.
The only difficult thing is sometimes pairing up with the perfect driver to drive with you, because like some of the guys aren't at your skill level, or they're above your skill level, or their cars are too much, or their cars are too little. Our cars are pretty evenly matched. Our
Right.
driving is pretty evenly
Right.
matched. And I know that like after Drift Week 1 was out of the way, like we don't hit each other often
Right.
or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's
So we've done hundreds of laps and not hit each other, and that's
well,
good.
and the way you've also got this set up
Hit
is
each other
with
once.
hot lapping and no lines.
Mm-hmm.
You literally like you're not waiting in line. You can just go lap after lap after lap after lap until your tires are dead or until your car overheats. And that's another type of intense training that you can't really get anywhere else.
There is one thing of like trust, and we were in my car and we were watching him get his car ready, and he has a ratchet strap in his hands, and we see him put the ratchet strap in the engine bay, and then like he closes the hood and gets out, and I'm like, oh God.
You got out of the car
no,
to come.
No. I was just like, it's probably okay. We chase you around the track once, and we come back in, and I'm like, all right, we didn't crash, but you have to show me what you did. And he'd been losing belts, so he ties a belt to like his radiator area, and then straight over
Through the belt.
through the belt into the engine area, so that as his belts pop off the engine, they get caught and just hang off this ratchet strap.
You can put it back on.
Yeah, and like as someone that's tandeming with them, and like the cars have to be dependable or we crash, you know. I'm just like, oh my God.
It's alternator only, so everything else works when the belt comes off.
Yeah. All right, let's go to bed.
All right.
We got another track day tomorrow.
It's gonna be a
Then we got
blast.
a Hoonigan shoot, and then we got 2 more track days, and then we got our shitbox derby. Are you gonna do the shitbox derby?
I think so.
I don't know when anybody's gonna get a chance to go buy those cars. By the way.
They're all gonna be sold out. Everyone's gonna be looking at the same cars when we go over there.
No, I mean we're so busy. If we're doing Hoonigan on Friday, there's not gonna be any chance for anybody to like. We're doing track day. You guys are gonna have a hard time going to get those damn cars for Monday.
That's true.
You better be crafty. What are you gonna buy?
PT Cruiser.
Oh God, that'd be good.
Looking
I
for
bet
the most
you-
unreliable junk we can find.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, audience. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
And Drift Week 7 is brought to you by Just Racing. They have a very fancy machine shop and build very fancy racing engines. Thank you to BC Racing Custom Coilovers for always supporting everything Lone Star Drift and Drift Week does. What Monsters Do, who also has a new logo over on the right. Thank you so much. Go over to their website, buy some merch. Discount code EBISU. Thank you to Vape Tasia for supporting drifting for quite some time, including forest weighing and all kinds of other cool stuff. NK Wheels, Volino Tires, and Heatwave Visual. Thank you very much. Thank you, audience. Bye.